So I guess as of November 11th, Rockstar released their definitive editions of the older Grand Theft Auto titles. And I don't think I need to tell you not to buy them. The saddest part is this is becoming a trend in gaming, and it has been for the last few years. And it's also the first reason I think GTA 6 will suck. I mean, I can't even think of a game that came out in the last 10 years that was a big title that released working out of the box. The last one I honestly remember is Halo 2. I guess maybe I'm a little more sensitive to this because I'm an older gamer. I've been playing video games since the 80s. So, I've seen games come out working a lot in my life. And to see game companies release their art the way it is today just makes me sad. And especially these GTA titles, man. These were such a big part of my life growing up. I've been playing GTA since GTA 1 on my first computer, back when computer mice still had balls. But to treat these old masterpiece titles like this is blasphemy in my book. Like, these games are literally the Mona Lisa of video games. They're the greatest piece of art that the video game industry has ever seen. And it feels like they just threw paint on the Mona Lisa. Like, it hurts. It's a little amazing even, basically because these aren't even new games. Rockstar didn't have to write new stories or create new characters or do motion capture for any of these people or re-record dialogue. I mean, the game was there. Basically, they needed to mod it to look nice and re-release it. And they couldn't even do that. And sadly, I think this is foreshadowing for GTA 6. Things like their choice of what to focus on during the remake are big foreshadowing clues to me. It's like they chose to make the job harder than it needed to be by trying to do things like make the rain not an on-screen effect that was just laid over top, but actually part of the engine, which in turn made the rain look way worse than it did in the first editions of the game. One of the producers from the new game talked about this in an interview in USA Today. He also mentions things like the lighting and the clouds and the moon and how they upgraded the look of the trees too. And granted, all these things are great, but I feel like they're missing the point. Little things like that, like just lack of focused priorities in the right spots, just really makes me worried for Grand Theft Auto 6 or any other game Rockstar's going to release. Not even just Rockstar, any company. I mean, the whole gaming industry right now has set a pattern of releasing games that are either broken on release or not done. And it looks like Rockstar's following that pattern perfectly to a T. But even if Rockstar could overcome all of these things and release a working Grand Theft Auto 6, there are a couple reasons GTA 6 will suck no matter what. Is the departure of half of their creative team that led development on all of the previous GTA titles, and the wildly insane cancel culture we live in today. Some of the creative leads that have left are Dan Houser, that wrote the stories for the storylines in GTA, or Leslie Benzies, one of the lead developers and producers of the Grand Theft Auto series, from GTA 3 on up. Laszlo Jones is also gone. You might even remember him from the frickin' game itself. He was one of the voice actors and characters in multiple games from Vice City on up. And last but not least, Imran Sarwar, and I know I'm probably pronouncing all of these names wrong, and I'm sorry, was one of the mission designers on every Grand Theft Auto since Vice City, and he's also gone. Granted, this doesn't technically mean that GTA 6 will suck, but it will definitely not be the same. There's no way you lose that many people in charge of creating art and voices and missions without your game design philosophy changing at its core. I've worked in plenty of corporate environments long enough to know that when you lose leadership like that, especially multiple people in different departments in leadership, the core culture of a company changes. It doesn't matter how influential they were. Because you have to hire someone else to fill their spot, that person changes the culture when they come in. There are a few people remaining that do give me hope that were integral parts of the older Grand Theft Autos And each of them were also leaders on the teams that lost people too. Like the guy that worked with Dan Houser on the stories, Rupert Humphreys, he's still around, which is a really good sign. A lot of the comedy, I believe, probably came from him anyways, because he is a comedian, I think. Or his dad was. I can't remember. But he does come from a comedic background, and I think that was part of the reason he got the job in the first place. And Aaron Garbutt, one of the artists and lead designer on world building, is still there too, which is probably going to be the key to this game either being good or not. I mean, it pretty much all lies in his hands if you ask me, because he's the only one that will be on this team that will understand how the old games were put together and what nuances went into that world building.
Oh, the nuances. Nuances. Nuances.
That could be used again, because the nuances are what make GTA.
Nuances.
They are GTA. That's what allows GTA to carry over its culture from one game to the next. It's taken the atmosphere from their old games and moved it over to a new city or environment and given you the same kind of feeling when you play the game or turn it on or hear the music. Very few games that have sequels carry over the atmosphere like these Grand Theft Auto titles do. The only other games I can even think of that do this are like the Fallout series and the Elder Scrolls series. I mean, Bethesda kills it with those two. They do the same thing with the atmospheres and carry them over. But still, not to the level of the Grand Theft Autos. The Grand Theft Autos blow those out of the water for atmosphere and in-game culture. I don't think people understand how amazingly hard it is to nail down satire like that and recreate it in a fake world. Because what makes satire and stuff work is the common knowledge of everybody together sharing all of the nuances of the culture they live in. Before you create satire in a game like that, you have to create the common knowledge of the game's culture beforehand so that the players will get the inside jokes when you pop them up. It's kind of like how movie quotes work for jokes.
Emergency water landing 600 miles an hour. Blank faces, calm as Hindu cows.
If you don't chew Big Red, then you.
Victor player.
Swinging past your knees.
You happy?
I'm very happy.
Honestly, I don't work there. I don't know the culture. I don't know who was influential in all of that. I mean, we have an outsider's point of view and we know what they tell us when they're under the spotlight. But what somebody tells you when they're on a microphone and what they actually feel are always different. But if one or two of those remaining game dev gods can pick up the slack or just infectiously spread the culture of the old style to the new people on the teams, I mean, they can get close. They could actually make a game worth it. But it is such a long shot. I can't get my hopes up for that. And I don't recommend anybody get excited for that, because the main reason GTA 6 is going to suck, and this is probably for sure, is because of the culture we live in today, our actual culture outside of the game, and how critical it is on every single subject. If you look back at the creation history of all the other Grand Theft Autos, you'll notice that all of them went through their own set of problems during creation or soon after release. They were all marred by bad press because of moms angry about the violence or sex in the games, or just the sheer shock value of it to a lot of people back then was large. I think the best example of this is 2005 when GTA San Andreas came out, and just after its release, somehow a mod came out to unlock a mission called Hot Coffee. In case you're not familiar with the Hot Coffee mission, basically it was after you built up a certain amount of relationship with one of the girls that you could build relationships with, they would eventually invite you in for coffee, and you would do an interactive sex scene where you could time your thrusts with your right thumbstick to raise the excitement meter and straight bang it out, son. It was bad enough that the US government tried to pass a bill called the Family Entertainment Protection Act to stop games from making content like this ever again, or even content that was remotely like this. If this bill would have passed, I mean, most of the games we know today would either be non-existent or so different that we wouldn't recognize them. There's no way you could make a game like Cyberpunk if this law was in existence. I mean, that game's technically a porno at some points. And naturally, when Dan Houser talks about this, I mean, it scared Rockstar. You could tell. Because they had investigations from the FBI and everybody come in and investigate their company, and it turned into a big mess. And this was in 2005. People in today's culture are so easily offended that, like, how could you make a game like GTA that prides itself on using cultural stigmas or taboos and twisting them into the most offensive versions possible of that and release that in the cancel culture we have today? Because, I mean, just as an example, one of the cultural things we have going on right now is the use of, like, different pronouns for the transgender communities. And it's tough, you know, a lot of people don't know what to do. But I could just see Rockstar twisting that in a weird way and totally pissing off a whole community of people. I mean, just look at what happened at Netflix with one comedy special. And I mean, that's comedy. And comedy's been around for hundreds of years. I mean, video games are such a new medium that they get a lot more scrutiny. But it's just an example of one small thing that, you know, GTA would probably include. There would probably be some transgender NPC or, you know, a character you interact with to get missions or something, just because it's such a big part of our culture today. How could you ignore that in a new Grand Theft Auto game? I mean, hell, they made a whole Grand Theft Auto expansion game called The Ballad of Gay Tony when gay people were starting to get a voice. I mean, the only way GTA is by offending people. If GTA comes out as some mellow crime RPG where you do your missions and they're pretty generic and you work for your own little mob boss and that's it, you know, it's just going to fall flat. But does Rockstar have the balls to put their dick on the table and put their billion-dollar empire on the line to make the kind of edgy game that would be required to be the next successor in a GTA franchise? If they don't push the boundaries, it's just simply not going to work. But pushing those boundaries opens those doors, which cause a lot of company stress and problems within. I mean, they can really hurt a company if they're not strong. It's tough to be investigated by the FBI and still be able to create a game at the same time. You never know what's going to happen when you push the envelope like that. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But if I could plead with Rockstar to do one thing, I would just invite them to involve their community. Let us help you test the game before you release it. I mean, if anything, we'll do it for free. Most people will. There are so many people that want this game to be successful that they would give anything they had just to see it work. I know this is never going to happen, but it's worth a try. And we got to put the good energy out there. Listen, I never want a game to fail. I want all of them to be good and working when they come out. And even if they're not, I want them to be fixed. But if this billion-dollar company won't even pay the licensing fees to put the music that makes their game special back in their old remasters, I mean, man, what hope do we have? It's stuff like that that's just so greedy and selfish. That just proves to me they're not out to do it for the gamers or even for the art. They're just in it for the money. But I really hope I'm wrong. But if you only follow one piece of advice from this video, just do one thing and don't pre-order it. Don't pre-order GTA 6, please. Don't pre-order any more games until these game companies can prove to us with at least one game that they can release them working bug-free from the start. I mean, many of y'all are way too young to know this or remember this, but the only reason people used to pre-order games is because they would run out of physical copies in the store and you couldn't get one. That isn't an issue today and won't be, so there's really no reason to ever pre-order a game. You can buy it the day it comes out. You can buy it the hour it comes out. You don't even have to wait in line at the store like you used to. So never pre-order a game. This really is the only power we have to fight back.